All right, everybody. Today we are going to be taking a look and breaking down Alex Hormozi's $100 million Money Models webinar. So, if you guys don't remember, this book launch was a super big deal in kind of the entrepreneurial space. And Alex just did like a full, like 6 hour breakdown of this. So, a lot of this knowledge is like super fresh for me. And I'm going to try and share as much of it as I can with you today. The game plan is that we're going to go step by step through each of the funnel steps. We'll kind of go over the structure of the funnel as well as kind of the strategy behind a lot of the copy that he uses so that you can hopefully find a nugget or two that you can steal and use for your funnels. This looks really similar to just kind of a standard like webinar setup. If you've ever done like perfect webinar or anything like that, you may recognize this format. So the first thing I want to kind of acknowledge with this landing page is that the landing page isn't super complicated. Like it's not a crazy long page with all this different stuff on it. It's actually really simple. And this is one of the things that I see also works really well because if you have a simpler page, like if you have fewer things on the page, then you have fewer things to test. And so you can really focus on like testing the important stuff. So I remember in the thing, he said that this headline, they did like a ton of split testing with this headline. I think they said they tested something like 20 or 30 different headlines. And this was the one that ultimately ended up performing far and away better than anything else. So the big thing with webinars or honestly any kind of landing page is that if you're not getting the opt-in rates that you want and you're like, man, is there something to test? This is the thing to test. Because if you go and look at an app like Clarity that checks like scroll depth, what you'll find is that most people don't even scroll at all when they land on your page. They're just looking at the thing that's there presented when it loads. And so testing the headline and your subheadline is one of the most valuable things you can do. And if you're testing anything on a funnel, what you want to do is you want to start from the top down. Super important. Now, up here at the top, he also includes like the general information for the event just to kind of set the expectation of when that'll be. I know that he has a VSL in here that I can't show you because it's a screenshot, but in this VSL, what he did is he basically expressed like, hey, I have this really cool gift. He said it's more than an NFT and it's less than a Tesla. And so it kind of builds this curiosity and opens a curiosity loop. So you have to show up to the event in order to figure out what the gift is. Big, colorful button for you to press that also, this is a little biggie, the button as like a subber has the date and time reiterated as well. He already did it here at the top, but he goes and he does it again on the button. This timer you'll see used all the time. And the point of having a timer is to basically leverage urgency. And so it's the idea that, if I didn't have this button here, you may not feel any need to go and take action now. You may be like, oh, I'll get around to it when I can. But having a timer here, whether it's something like, when the event starts, just as kind of a visual piece, or if it's something like you have a limited time offer, these timers just crush. So if you do like everything really well leading into the sale, like for the time that they land on the page, if you have this timer, it's just enough if you've done a good job to push them over the edge and get them to take action. From here, what he does is he also like leverages a little bit of proof to kind of demonstrate, hey, like the last two books that I did in this series has 32,000 5-star reviews. And so it just kind of leverages up a little bit higher for people who may not be familiar with him. And then it has one last CTA down here at the bottom. Now, when you click on any of these buttons, it actually opened up this opt-in. This was a cool little animated thing to kind of show like, hey, like you're almost registered to it. And so I actually couldn't figure out how to do this inside of ClickFunnels, but I know he built it in Shopify. So I think there's a handful of like custom assets he's using here. Big pop-up register now. He collects first name and last name, especially for those of you guys who use Perspective. I notice a lot of you guys by default only collect first names. Love to collect first and last. It's just better. Email address, phone number. And then in this case, it's kind of a qualifying piece of, do you have a business? Like, are you existing business owner or are you brand new? It doesn't disqualify them from signing up to this webinar, but it does indicate like what kind of follow-up messaging we're going to do via email and text. And so the messaging is going to be very different to somebody who's brand new and he may want to send that person to school compared to a business owner that he wants to send to, the advisory program. Now, once you get the free opt-in, you get a VIP upsell. Now, in this case, it's for a book, but if you're doing a challenge or a webinar, you can do a VIP upsell as well. And usually what people include is they'll include something like a workbook to go along with the lesson so you can kind of work along with it. And I've also seen there be like extra like VIP only Q&A sessions. So if you have like, let's say you have a 3-day challenge and your days each day are, 3 hours, you have the 3 hours for everybody, and then you have an extra hour at the end that you do just for VIP. One of the things that I also really like, you can see that this urgency timer makes its appearance again. The other thing I really like about what Armozy did with this is so a lot of people what they do is they'll emphasize certain things by bolding them, kind of like this. But Alex did something cool. He did bolds and he did highlights, which I think is kind of cool. Like not all funnel builders can do something like this. So I'll maybe at some point I'll make like a little micro training and figure out like what are all the platforms you can do this in because having another way to emphasize something to be like, hey, like this is the super important thing would be really cool because you just want to get people to read the right parts of your message. I also be there to answer your questions. So this is basically just doing the day with Alex giveaway that they did for anybody who bought. So that's another kind of one of those things you can do is just find other ways to incentivize people to go and buy your offer. In this case, like Alex is a big public figure, and so time with him or access rather is something that you can put on a stack here. So this piece here was an access element. All right, so this next section here, the live workshop, is another form of access, and he does a lot of access stuff. You know, whether it's access to him or access to recordings or what have you, there's a ton of stuff that he's able to do just because he has the influence. Now, here on the order form, if you actually go through and you buy the order, he also has this order bump. I actually ended up buying this order bump. And so what was cool about this is that it was, hey, add 15 books and then get access to these exclusive handbooks that you can't get anywhere else. And so I know that there's a line somewhere in here where it's like, oh no, it's literally this right here. It says, upgrade now and get the 2 tools my team begged me not to release. I can't entirely put my finger on it, but this is super similar to what Steve Jobs used to do when he would announce new Apple products. Basically, what he would do is he would get on stage and he would be like, we have been waiting 2 years for this day today. And so it's kind of this idea that if you express how long you've been waiting or how hard you have worked or how much you have put in, immediately the audience will value that thing more. And so the idea that his team begged him not to release it basically implies that it is insanely valuable so much that they would want to keep it secret for themselves. Now, this order confirmation page is honestly where I think a lot of people could get a ton of value because a lot of the stuff that he does on this page is geared specifically just to get people to show up to the event because it's one thing to get registrants, it's a whole other thing to get people to show. So the first thing that he does is funny enough, he gives people a chance to go back and actually go buy the order bump and the upsell. And then what he does is he has this section here that allows for people to add the event to their calendar regardless of what type of calendar they use. So whether it's Apple, Google, Outlook, whatever, he has a button here that literally just took you straight to like whatever platform it was and plugged all the info in and you just had to hit save. So we rushed through all of that to really get into the meat and potatoes. This is the sales page for the core offer that he made on $100 million money models. He made a bunch of other offers alongside this, but we're not going to have a ton of time to get into that today. So the very first thing that we see here is we have an urgency play. And so he does this urgency play with the idea that, hey, like you can only buy this offer while this live stream is going on. So he did it for the entire 3-day launch event. And was constantly saying like, hey, like it's going to be gone at this time. It's going to be gone, you know, when the stream turns off or what have you. Buy now, pay later is one of those topics that's like a little polarizing right now. And I know that a lot of people want to be able to use it and it's really hard to. The only reason, and I remember him talking about this, the only reason that these guys were able to get a firm to sign off on something like this was because they were doing physical products. If you're doing digital, it's actually a lot harder to get buy now, pay later now. The only way that I really know to do it is through like Kajabi because Kajabi has Kajabi payments and they have Klarna built in. And so you can like plug all that stuff in and it works pretty natively. So on the left, he has this simple kind of carousel images that he goes through. And then underneath all of that, he has got the testimonials. So one of the most compelling things that you can have in your sales letter or your offer or your webinar or whatever is proof. Like what you want to do is you want to show that you have given the result that you promise for other people like them recently. And so it can't be like, you know, 6 month, 12 month, 18 month old like testimonials. Like they need to be recent. And so we'll see that he'll go through and obviously do like these big like dumps of testimonial photos, but then he'll kind of go into and do individual examples here and there. So as he's coming in to introduce the playbooks, he shows that we worked with 1,026 plus businesses to create the playbooks. And so this is again really similar to what Jobs did, is it's showing how much work went into building this thing. Because if you think that they spent a ton of time and energy and work on building the thing, you'll naturally value it more. So he has this big header where he kind of just like presents the offer again. And then in this next section, he does something cool is this is a price anchor. So what a price anchor does is it's when and he does it kind of all through this whole thing. But what a price anchor is it's where you present a price usually in terms of like the value of or others have paid. And it essentially makes it so that whenever you present the real price, it just looks so much smaller by comparison, right? So for example, if I say that I have, you get this thing and you get this thing and you get this thing and you get this thing, all together that is a $420,000 value, you're going to get it today for $50,000 or $1,000 or however much. Because you anchored at 420,000, 50,000 doesn't seem like that much money. Now, think about it on the other side if you anchored it towards 1,000, right? Well, if you talk about $1,000 first, then $10,000 sounds like a monstrous amount of money. But even in the context of this 50 grand, 10 grand feels a lot cheaper, right? And so having something that you're anchoring to is super valuable. And Alex does it a ton through honestly all of the webinar pages that I've seen of his. So what Alex is doing with this the first system you get is actually called a offer stack. And I may do a more in-depth training on like a stack and close strategy type deal, but essentially this idea that he's going to go, the first thing you get is this, the second thing you get is this. And the idea with this strategy is that every single element there should overcome some sort of obstacle or address a problem that the prospect will have. So for example, the very first one that he starts off with is it's ads and branding. So it's all about like client acquisition for these first ones. So in this case, he's talking a little bit more tactically. He's talking about, turn 5 ads into 600 using the hook meet CTA lineup. He talks about, unaware to most aware. This is the 5 levels of awareness that we've talked about here in the community. And so real quick, I want to deviate over real fast and kind of talk about like how do people explain value? And value is basically explained by how do you make it easy? How do you make it fast? And how do you make it risk-free? What we really want to look for is we want to look through, and a good habit to get into is when you're looking at different funnels and you're like, okay, like I think I kind of want to like funnel hack this. Look through the copy and like go through and like highlight like, okay, this is how he's explaining how this thing is easier, this is how he's explaining that it's faster, this is how he's explaining that it's risk-free, right? And kind of get into the motion of like figuring out like what words do people use to like attack each of these kind of different elements. And it makes it easier because you can kind of like catalog them and you build like a big Rolodex of copy depending on what you need. It's pretty cool, right? We jump into content marketing. And so this is what I was talking about earlier. So in this case, he shows a specific example of somebody, right? Ava, who's 19 years old, kind of gives the idea of like, hey, if she can do it, anybody can do it. He goes and talks about the big results. And these were B2B high ticket recurring sales. So kind of emphasize the fact of like, hey, if you're a high ticket person, this is something that'll work for you. And obviously has a picture here with a message talking about the result that she got. The second thing you're going to get is you're going to get the systems one. And notice that every single one of these has another call to action to buy. And so it's the idea that anytime that you have like a section where you're talking about something, you want to have another chance. So if you've overcome an objection, give them another chance to buy. If you've introduced a new, value or element to the value equation, add another call to action. And the way that these are set up is that you click on these and they just scroll back up to the top to the checkout form, right? And you'll notice that the format for all of these kind of follows the same sort of system. So he first introduces the specific system, explains what it does, and then gives CTA. In this section, he goes more into specific details. Then he does testimonial. And then way down here at the bottom is compliance. And so you'll notice that basically all of these follow that same format, right? You have intro, you have this part, you have your CTA, you have the specific details, testimonial, and your compliance. When we jump into ACQ AI, we do that price anchor strategy again. Also, a little fun fact, having high quality mockups and stuff like this increases the perceived value of your thing by so much. We actually have a resource inside of our school community that kind of helps people build really high quality like device mockups and stuff. So if you're not in the school group, you should go and join that because it's free and there's no reason why you shouldn't be in there. Take a look at this part. So it's get your answers in 60 seconds that others paid 135,000 and years to discover. So he's doing a few things. So price anchor, And these two, like the 60 seconds and the years, these all end up coming back to how do you make it faster? Another price anchor here, as well as showing how many businesses he worked with to try and increase the perceived value. Now, I'm going to spoil the movie for you a little bit because he has this whole like has never been available before, included in the bundle, whatever, whatever. Just because an offer is going away, like on the timer, doesn't mean that somebody will never offer it again. Alex actually offered ACQ AI again during the $100 million launch workshop, and I think he had that thing priced at it was 3K down and then like 299 a month or something like that. This next part that he does is pretty cool because it's actually more of an objection overcome. So a lot of people who, let's say, aren't super like knowledgeable about AI may have concerns about their ability to use something like this. They're like, I'm not super tech savvy. I don't really know about AI. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. And so what he does is he also includes this implementation workshop. And it basically explains, you'll leave with absolute clarity with a personalized game plan and da 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 da. And so this whole section is really meant to overcome the concern of, okay, well, I don't know if I'll know how to use this AI thing, right? So explains all that stuff, does yet another testimonial piece, compliance. Now Alex does another value stack here, but he doesn't actually include the price, which is really interesting. So he goes playbooks, implementation workshop, AI access, money models hard copy, this guy here, and then one final CTA, or as low as 250 bucks a month with the firm, and then goes down into FAQs at the bottom. So as you guys can see, there is a ton of stuff going on with this funnel that hopefully you guys are able to take for yourself and maybe find a little bit of a nugget there. So if you guys like this type of stuff, like let me know in the school comments if you're watching on school, or on YouTube if you guys are watching it over there. I actually have access to a bunch of other funnels, so I've got like some Iman Ghazi funnels and Ali Abdal stuff that I'd love to take a look at. So if you like this kind of stuff, like let me know. I'd love to keep making it.